What's going on, everyone? My name's Tenebrous Infinite, and welcome to an in-depth look at the ARM Cyberware in Cyberpunk 2077. There are 4 Cyberware in the game. There is the Gorilla Arms, the Mantis Blades, the Monowire, and the Projectile Launch System. Today we're going to be comparing the 4 of them based on the attacks that they offer you and the variety that they offer you, as well as their general performance in combat. So first things first, let's start taking a look at the Gorilla Arms. So for the Gorilla Arms, you get the exact same moveset that you have for your basic hand-to-hand combat here in Cyberpunk. You have a 5-hit combo, a charge attack, a rising uppercut attack from a crouched position, a sprint attack, and a jump attack, as well as a kind of defensive shoving attack. So when it comes to combat with the Gorilla Arms, these are actually really fun to mess around with. You can apply status effects by applying various types of knuckles to the Gorilla Arms, and on top of that, you get a lot of variety within the basic hand-to-hand combat here in Cyberpunk.
That's something.
On top of the incredibly respectable DPS that you can do with the Gorilla Arms, there's also a lot of fun that can be had with just kind of knocking the enemies around. A lot of times you can knock enemies off their feet just by punching them in the face, which is really satisfying. And the way you can experiment with the movement tech in combination with that rising uppercut attack can also lead to some really interesting ways that you can kind of initiate and start a fight. And equally, the application of utilizing these various arm mods as a stealth weapon is really lucrative in the game. And the other kind of benefit too to the Gorilla Arms is, as a blunt weapon, they're non-lethal, so you can actually use them to take down enemies in a non-lethal approach.
Ready to rumble.
Careful now. I don't fuck around.
And then the kind of final unique application that you can get out of the Gorilla Arms is bringing them into the Beat on the Brat side missions and utilizing them to get through the fights just a little bit easier. This can be a huge benefit if you haven't spec'd into your body or if you haven't unlocked many perks in the kind of Brawler perk tree. With their wide range of application and the unique variety you get out of the hand-to-hand combat in Cyberpunk 2077, the Gorilla Arms are a ton of fun to muck around with.
Better stop trying! Stop the fight! Can't you see he's had enough?
Now next up, let's talk about one of my personal favorites, the Mantis Blades. Now first things first, let's talk about the attacks that you can perform with the Mantis Blades. So you have a unlimited combo that you can do with the Mantis Blades, which is incredibly powerful and yields some of the craziest DPS that you can actually achieve in Cyberpunk. Then on top of that, you also have a charge attack, which if you aim at an enemy from a distance is a lunging, pretty much one-hit kill attack. You also have a block attack, which is kind of like this evasive slash maneuver that you could perform. And then also you have a stronger single swing that you can perform from a jump attack or from crouching. And the final attack that you can perform with the Mantis Blades is while you're sprinting, you can hit the attack button and you'll wind up doing that lunging attack, which again, a lot of times it's pretty much a one-hit kill. The Mantis Blades really promote a wild and frenzied approach to combat, which can be just a ton of fun to mess around with. Just running through a group of enemies, decapitating and removing limbs, all the while you're just kind of swinging your Mantis Blades away. And the interesting movement tech from that block attack is also a lot of fun to mess around with. I highly advise those players out there that have spec'd into blades and think, oh, I've got a katana, why should I use Mantis Blades? Really, give the Mantis Blades a shot. They are a ton of fun to mess around with, and if you've spec'd into blades, they're really, really powerful. Now, just like the gorilla arms, these are technically really stealthy weapons to use as well. Even though they look very high profile, they're still pretty stealthy. But unlike the gorilla arms, they're blades, so they are technically considered to be lethal weapons.
That's it. You're mine now.
Now next up, let's talk about the monowire, and the discussion around the monowire is going to be a little bit different than the previous two because we're going to get into some things that I would like to see happen in the future of Cyberpunk through updates and patches. Now first off, let's talk about the attacks that you can perform with the monowire. So you get a basic 5-hit combo, just like the gorilla arms. You get a charge attack, you get a jump attack, and a rising attack, and you also have a sprinting attack too. But there is no unique defensive attack, unlike with the Mantis Blades and the Gorilla Arms. Now, one of the big benefits to the monowire is the fact that it's an AoE attack, so you can utilize the monowire to attack multiple enemies at the same time. Now this does come with a bit of a downside though, because it can be really hard to gauge the range and gauge the kind of attack radius that you have with the monowire. As well, the monowire has this kind of charging function where the less you use it in combat, the more damage it does. Which means that overall, in terms of DPS, it has one of the lower ends of DPS for Cyberware arm mods, just due to that diminishing return in combat. Now, let's get into what I would like to see kind of changed about the monowire, because I think that the monowire could serve a very unique purpose that it hasn't realized in the game yet. So first things first, I think that either it would be nice to see how much the monowire has charged up in the middle of combat with some sort of visual overlay on the HUD, or it would be cool to see the monowire's kind of diminishing returns be inversed and instead see the monowire get stronger the more you use it and the more you swing away with it. Now the other thing that would be cool to see for the monowire is to see it kind of live up to its promised potential of having unique takedowns and the ability to kind of hack enemies from the distance, maybe through some sort of unique breach function or something like that. That way the monowire would be a really awesome option for using for stealth playthroughs and for maximum cool playthroughs.
Fuck! We need to
Now for the last ARM Cyberware we're going to talk about today, it's arguably the most broken ARM Cyberware and potentially the most broken weapon in the entire game. Now, unlike the other ARM Cyberware, there's really only one attack you can do with the projectile launch system, which is launch the projectile that you have loaded into it. It essentially works as a unlimited grenade that you could just fire off against enemies without any kind of cost or diminishing return. Now, even though there isn't any sort of combos or any sort of unique attacks, it doesn't mean that there isn't any sort of unique tech that you can use with the projectile launch system. So with the projectile launch system, there's multiple types of ammunition you can load into it, and what you're able to do is swap that ammunition on the fly in the middle of combat. Now, even though the projectile launch system is arguably one of the more broken weapons in the game, it doesn't mean that there aren't downsides to it. It's also the most high-profile ARM Cyberware in the game, so that means that a lot of times you'll wind up attracting unwanted police attention or potentially alerting enemies to your presence the moment you use it. But alerting enemies to your presence doesn't really matter if you explode them all in one fell swoop. Now, as I had said, the projectile launch system is one of the more broken weapons in the game, and that's simply due to these tranquilizer rounds. These tranquilizer rounds will automatically pacify an enemy and put them to sleep, and also on top of that, it's a non-lethal round, so you can a lot of times use it for those fights that you're maybe having a hard time with if you're trying to go for a non-lethal takedown. Now, there are still other downsides outside of the high profile of the projectile launch system. The first downside is the fact that if the enemies get too close to you and you happen to pop a rocket off, you're going to wind up nuking yourself in the process. And then the other downside is that even though it kind of works with a smart tracking system, it doesn't really show that it's locked on to the enemies, so a lot of times it can be kind of hard to gauge whether or not that smart tracking system is targeting the enemy that you want to target. But still, it's undeniable between the unique ability to swap ammo types on the fly right after launching it, and the tranquilizer round just automatically incapacitating your opponent, that the projectile launch system is incredibly powerful and a ton of fun to play around with in the game. So let's get down to how I would personally rate all of these in a kind of unbiased standpoint. So first off, I would say the gorilla arms are the best, just due to their unique application of utilizing them in the street fights, and the fact that they're just an added benefit to the melee and hand-to-hand fighting in the game. Second up, I would have the projectile launch system. Though it has its downsides, its tranquilizer darts are undeniably broken, and it's a lot of fun to mess around with doing that kind of on-the-fly swapping of ammo. Next up, I would put the Mantis Blades, simply due to the fact that they don't have any sort of unique application to them, but they're still a ton of fun to use. And then in last place, I would put the Monowire, because the Monowire definitely needs some love, some work done on it. So there you go, my dudes. There's my personal tier list of the ARMS Cyberware in Cyberpunk 2077. I want to know, do you agree with my list, or would you organize it differently? Are you a real big fan of the Mantis Blades? Do you think that the Monowire is good as it is, or do you think it needs some attention? Let me know with all of your thoughts and feelings in the comments down below. And hopefully, if you're just getting into Cyberpunk 2077, I've been able to show you the different types of ARMS Cyberware and help you make a decision on which one you want to personally go after in the game. But for now, I've been Tenebris, you've been awesome, thank you so much for watching my video, and I will catch you all in the next one. Until then, peace.